comments for report cards. So, yeah, clocking out.
Yeah, I got
you. With a timeline.
This is season 7, episode 26, number 291 of the Decoded podcast. What a way to start it, talking about report cards. You hit me.
Yeah, just lightly though, right? Just lightly. What I do want to talk about, just briefly, and this is something that I think is maybe some people do, maybe some people know. I think that the bottom line in education is that there are more deadlines that we have in education that are negotiable than we realize. I think that part of one of the inside jokes, one of the inside jokes is that in order for people to learn authentic organization, delivery, attendance, responsibility, in order to do that in an authentic way, we have to have artificial deadlines. So it's like we're what's the word? Creating these stressful hand in, turn in, due date deadline moments that I really like leaning into those. I'll be less abstract. For the last 2 weeks, we've been getting emails about getting our report cards done. Okay, which is fine. This is what the system does. That's fine. This is what the humans in the systems do. They send these things out. So on midweek, we get several emails. By the way, they're due by 9 a.m. Friday morning. And I get that deadline. I get that deadline is layered. There's a reason why that deadline has been picked. Some of it, very small part of it, important to me. The larger part of it, important to other parties that I might have no clue about their job. Or, right, just how the information has to flow through the system. When that email came out, I looked to see when the actual report cards are going into people's hands. And that was a good reminder because I don't even know what the date is. What's the date today? 18th, 19th?
20th.
Today's the 20th. So the report cards don't go out for another week and a half. Okay. Now I kind of say, and this isn't me, I'm not trying to be an asshole. I am not. But I look at that, I'm like, okay, if this is digital information, I get that there's humans that have to sign off on this. I get all this, this is it. I said, however, my timeline now is that I didn't, not because I didn't plan for it, but because life just has so much going on, I'm not at a point where I can hit send on my comments. So I hit reply on the email and I say, I'm going to get them in Saturday morning. And I got an okay. Okay. The email that had come out to that made it seem like it's an absolute wall. They have to be in by the state. I'm not saying that we all need to shake the system this way, but I think there's an interesting little reflection, like reflective practice moment, just to pause on this and realize that many of the timelines that we have are artificial, or there's elements of it that are artificial. And sometimes trying to figure out the salient, concrete parts of it can be difficult. So we tend to play to the safe side. Okay, I'm gonna burn myself out trying to get this thing done in time. I'm gonna ignore my wellness to get this thing done on time. I'm gonna take shortcuts in order to get this thing done on time. To our listeners, I would just say, at some point, start having discussions about these timelines. See if you can figure out what's the ingredients for that recipe. Right? If this is the answer, this date, what are the questions that you could ask leading up to it so that you kind of get a better idea of whose invisible list you're on, right? Because there could be 20 other people that are making a decision that you have to hand something in on a Friday. So I like this. I like this kind of a shakedown of the system because I'm on the other side of it within my career, where I'm now checking the receipts and realizing um, I haven't been paid back. I haven't been paid back for half the receipts that I'm carrying in education. My time is gone, my money is gone, my wellness is gone. And I'm not as prepared to do that moving forward. And I feel like the only way is I have to up my game and ask these questions when these things happen. Right. So, yeah. Um, Shorter pod this morning. Robust on ramp, though. Sorry, folks. We got to do that. We got to do what we got to do. But I like this, I know that, like, I got up early this morning. I got up early. I'm like, let's say 90% to the way done. So I know when we get off the pod, I can drop in for another 30 minutes. They're done. They're posted. They can be signed off. I will say one of the bigger challenges with me doing my report cards is that they're all anecdotal based, because I don't have the template of credit bearing courses. So I'm writing about what are the kids actually doing in class. So each kid gets a short narrative about, the skill that they developed, where it is in the range of skills, and, what they can do to take it to the next step. So mine are a little bit different. But yeah, you lit me up with that, or I lit myself up with that. Report cards, timelines, living in the matrix. I don't know what that last comment meant, apart from there's a virtual reality that sometimes we think is real. But asking some questions, you kind of wake up. You could wake up, I guess.
You got me thinking about the whole report card process that I'm used to.
Mm-hmm.
And my approach, so it's depending on who your principal is, you get different deadlines. So like there's the memo from the district that says this is the day we need them in. And that's been worked on with the union, right? So the union and the school board come together and they put something together saying this is the soonest that they can be asked for. So you do not have to hand them in before this day. So there's that date. Then there's, when you're meeting with your principal at a staff meeting, they'll tell you that date because somebody always says, what day do they have to be in?
Mm-hmm.
And then I've worked for principals that say to me, or that say to the staff, they have to be in that day, but you can take the weekend if you need it. And the hard deadline is Tuesday. So the school board might say Thursday, and then you say to your staff, I understand things are tight, lots going on, so you don't have that time. If you send it to me, good. If you don't, that's okay. But please, hard deadline Tuesday, so that me and the VP or just me can read them all in time to get them back to you for signatures, all that stuff. And then there's always staff members that miss the hard deadline. They miss the soft and the hard deadline for whatever reason. I'm not judging, I'm just saying it happens. And then there's people like me that get it to you. So if it's due on a Thursday, then I do my best to have them done at least a week early so that I can they're done a week early. I can take a day or two to just walk away from them and then look at them one more time and I submit them on Monday. So 4 days ahead of schedule. Some principals I've said to them, I'm going to hand them in early. Does that mean you're going to give them back to me early? Or do I have to wait for everybody else to get them back? Some principals, most of the time, they're like, no, if you get them to me. Some of them have said, I can't read it until the weekend at the very least. So you hand them in on Mondays, great, but I'm not going to get to them until Friday night anyway, no matter how early you get them to me. Okay? But they're like, but I'll read them in order of how I receive them. So, Monday morning, I would probably get mine back with 4 or 5 other people because we handed them in so early. He or she placed them in sequence so that you hand them in early. I'll read them first. It's just this whole topic's interesting. I like to get them done. I like to get them done nice and early for my wellness, and also the unknown factors, the X factors that come up, like something happens in your home, and all of a sudden, um, you don't have time to work on it because there's a situation you're dealing with that's far more important than work. Something happens to a kid, you get sick, your partner gets sick, just something happens, right? And you have to deal with something that's happening, which leaves no time for the other things that I don't want to say procrastinated. Like, I don't want to use that word because it's kind of negative. And I don't want, not meaning to be negative, but just things pop up. Things pop up, and they need your time. So you give it to them, but that means you can't give it to the work that needs to be done for work. So I just like to stay on top of that stuff. I like to get it done early so that if I start early and something happens, then hopefully I can still get them in on the proper day. But if I start early and nothing happens and I get them done early, then that's it. They're done. I can just hand them in and not have to worry about them until they come back with the changes that need to be made. So there are different deadlines. Before we had rules around what day the principal could ask for, and the reason why we have these new dates in place because some principals wanted them, 2 weeks earlier than other principals wanted them. So staff were like, well, I'm not school at this school. I need to have them in on this day. And at my wife's school, they get 2 more weeks. I could use 2 more weeks. It's not fair. So then they came up with dates right across the system, right from the superintendents. But I've seen negotiation. And, at the end of the day, really at the end of the day, you go to a principal and you say they're not ready. I can't hand them in. What are they going to do? And I don't say that disrespectfully, but what are they going to do? I'm going to discipline you, okay? And then what? You think that's going to help me get them done for you sooner? Like, it's just, this is human nature. This is the part of leadership that kind of sucks. That you'll have people come and say, I can't get this to you when you say you need it. It's like, okay, well, how do we make this work? How do we do this? I've seen, and this scares the crap out of me. I have seen teachers signing and photocopying their report cards the day that they're supposed to go home. And that just drives me nuts. Because that means that somewhere along the way, things couldn't happen the way that they should to make sure that these things are ready to rock a day or two before they're supposed to go home. The morning of or the lunchtime of the day that they're going home drives me nuts. Because I'm like, you waited way too long. Or something happened that caused this to go right to the end. I've heard a story about a teacher that was in my system. He's passed now, so God bless him. I hope everything's well in that family. I heard this teacher, his report cards didn't even go out on the day he was supposed to. That's how late they were. And I was baffled when I heard this. I'm like, what do you mean? They're like, the kids went home and they didn't get the report cards from this guy because they weren't ready to go. I'm like, how is that possible? And then it was like, I guess this guy in conjunction with the principal had to do some stuff over the weekend to make sure they were ready for Monday. And I was like, talk about taking me to the max. I thought I saw it all and heard it all until I heard, yeah, this guy, he wasn't ready. They just didn't go home. I'm just like, what? But again, what really is the big deal? So the parents didn't get their report card Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Did anything crazy happen because of that? No. Deadlines, timelines.
And I'm fine with those things. Like I actually am. I don't I'm not that guy. And I actually do like being known as someone that delivers on timelines, right? And I'm definitely more strident when it's timelines that I set up. Like when I have the play and I say, this is when I'm going to deliver it. Like just me committing to that and telling somebody and then activating that feels good. It feels good to sort of like know my process, know the system, know the steps clear enough that when I say this is going to happen in this way, that type of agency is gorgeous. Like it's just so cool, right? It's the gift that we hope to incite in our students as well, that they actually have the tools to be declarative and say this can be done like this because I know my kit. Um, at the same time, I've had to learn to, but I've become more comfortable with advocating and pushing into the system a little bit. Because there is a little bit of me that sort of thinks to myself, if it is arbitrary, tell me it's arbitrary. If it is reasoned, then that's reasoned and measured, then talk me through that. Because otherwise my system doesn't get better. Then I'm using really technical, shrewd pushback on a loose system that I don't understand. And you don't get good data out of that. I don't know which one of the 14 tools that I'm actioning is the one that actually gets into the conversation and helps me to understand what's actually going on. For me, there's a very clear one-to-one kind of pairing with tool and outcome if I'm asking questions about your process. I can't come in thinking like I can use a buffet of a full toolkit in order to understand why you've set deadlines and then let you be abstract. And sometimes it is, I know it's not as simple as the person that's telling you the timeline might not all have all the information as to why that timeline was set up. I get it. There's a whole bunch of other humans. I had one principal say, we need this in a day early because right now we are missing some staff. They're on leave in the office. And us as the administration, like the administrators, the VP and the principal, have taken on some of those duties. So what it means is that no matter how this plays out, we're doing work on the weekend. And I was like, wow, that's a straight up answer. So they basically said, could you really do your best to get it in so that we could get our work done during the work week? I'm like, that's stunning, but perfect. Okay, I'll do my best. Let me see if I can let me see if I can work out an efficiency because my timeline with my criteria, my life didn't match up to that. So I hear you. I'm now in a position where, because I understand where you're coming from, I may have to compromise my life. I have to decide whether or not I'm going to compromise my timeline, which gives me, more freedom, or chip away at that and give some to you so you have more freedom. Yes to something, no to something else. It's that clear. But I really appreciated that clarity because it just cut through the bullshit. It was very clear. We don't have the staff right now that we normally do. By getting this early, it means we can sort of work it into our workday, or maybe our workday gets just a little bit longer, but we can parse it out over the week. And then we get a weekend, which is necessary for our wellness as well. I like that. I like that a lot. I look for those spaces. I try to find relationships and moments where I can ask those direct questions. Um, and I definitely, I will say, from my point of view, I'm not the person to betray that once I have it. I don't use it as leverage. I don't see, if someone explains that to me, I don't see it as weakness. It's data, but it helps me to understand the nature of the pressures and the nature of the demands. When I look at my receipts now, 23, 24 years into my career, I know the ones where people were having to sort of do a thing because, like, I know the ones that were genuine and honest. I know the ones where it was just like, we're going to do all this just because. I don't like the just because receipts, and I don't like it when I fall in step with the just because receipts.
I can appreciate the non BS for sure. You've got me thinking about relationships and
Mm-hmm.
how um, if someone who has been pretty good to me and not maybe I shouldn't say me, but pretty good in general in my judgment of just being a caring individual and looking out for others and maybe being not non BS most of the time. And then they make a request like that. I'm chances are I'm going to meet that requirement anyway because of the way I operate, right?
Mhm.
So the principal makes the announcement. I'm like, I already handed mine in. So like I already handed mine in 3 days ago. Now you're telling us about the office situation, right? So I'm like, okay, good. It's one less thing I need to think about or deal with. Check that box off. But if someone who's been a tyrant the entire time in general says, hey, I need you to do me a solid, it's like, you know what? My priority's not here with you. And that's because we don't have a relationship. And there have been times where I've gone to you and I've said, hey, can you do me a solid? The answer is no. Do your job. I'm not deviating. Okay, well, so there's factors, right? There's
Mhm.
factors. And I've told you this before, even when I've worked for someone that I've perceived to be um, non BS and helpful. I've always heard someone else say to me, I don't do well with this person. I don't do well with this leadership style. I'm not helping. So there's always different perspectives and there's always different viewpoints and thoughts and feelings about things. Yeah, this is interesting. This whole relationship, deadlines, timelines, report cards. It's like there's lots going on.
Mhm.
Lots going on. And then, to add on top of that, you're writing anecdotal report cards. So, there's
Little
no
stories.
little stories. There's no canning. There's no there's no canning going on for you. You're not opening a can and getting anything out of it. It's like, oh, I gotta write Jimmy's story now. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
no stamp. It's just, okay, it's time to tell Jimmy's story. Okay, it's time to tell Roland's story. Okay, it's time to tell Emilia's story. I mean,
Did you mention little Jimmy?
I did. Jimmy was the
There we
first
go.
one.
I
Yeah,
think, yeah, there we go. Jimmy's back.
Jimmy's back. Little stories. And then when I wrote report cards, there was, often there was a Jimmy in the class that required their own little story.
Hmm.
For whatever reason, they weren't getting a, a regular, typical report card. And then for everybody else, there was okay, in science, the student earned a B, and here's my B comment. And in science, the student earned an A minus. Well, here's the A minus comment. Um, and then where's the differentiation? The differentiation happens in I was differentiating within differentiation. So even though I had one B comment for every B student, I had 4 or 5 next steps that were dependent on the student, right? So it's like not every student who earned a B needs to spend more time looking over the vocabulary that's introduced at the start of the unit, you know? Um, so not everybody got that next step, even though they earned a B. I have fun with it and I try, but I do try the best I can to create a package where I can hit autopilot at some point. Because if I don't, then I'm going to spend all my time writing those things. And I don't want to spend all my time writing those things, nor do I think I should.
Hmm.
So I build a system that works for me. But even within that system, there's differentiation for me. Some people are like, you're crazy that you do it like that. I'm like, well, that's how I do it because I can speak to these report cards
Hmm.
and they're for me, they're authentic. So I can say, like one time I thought this was funny. In the recent past, I had 2 parents come in to see me and they were like, hey, we're not complaining. We just think it's funny that both of our kids got this mark in this subject and their comments are the exact same except for their name. I'm like, okay. And they're thinking that's what I did for everybody who got that mark. And I'm like, it's just the two of you talking? Like, have you spoken to 10 other people? Because I guarantee you, if you do, you'll see that there's going to be differentiation there. And I was looking at them like, what's your point? Do you have a point to make here? Do you have a complaint, compliment? And we could talk that way with these parents. And they're like, no, is this how report cards are written? And I said, I can't tell you. I'm not going to speak about your son in front of her, and I'm not going to speak about your son in front of her. I'm not supposed to do that. That's none of your business. What I will tell you though is that what I said in the report card is accurate. So, um, the comment I made about their knowledge and understanding is exactly what they demonstrated and what I observed. And my next step is what I believe they could do to improve in that area at this time. And then they were like, oh, geez, we didn't mean to. I'm like, I'm not offended. I can't. Like, if you want to talk to me on your own, then I'll tell you some stuff that I'm not going to say in front of that person.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm like, isn't that what you'd want me to do? Do you really want me to talk to you guys about your two kids in front of each other? Like, I'm not doing that, even if that's what you want. I'm not doing that. So it was interesting, though, because I was like, in a friendly way, what is your purpose here? What are you trying to say? I'm lazy? Are you trying to say I'm smart for being efficient? Like, I don't know what you're trying to tell me here. And, did they have the same comment? Their learning skills? Did you two take a look at your learning skills and see if they're the same? Because, again, I have a system for that too. But I find as I'm going nuts in the learning skills, which is the biggest box on the report card, yeah, I even deviate from my deviations and differentiations. So as I'm typing this, I'm like, you know what? This isn't 100% accurate of Jimmy. I need to flex on this and I need to flex on that. And I need to ease up and not make this sound so heavy here because Jimmy's not heavy in that department. And then at the end, I do my best to say something positive and unique about the student that is not the same for any other student. So there's an automaticity, but there's also a customization. But there is a package. I do not just start writing my report cards without um, certain comments or certain markers in place to assist me and keep me grounded. I do not do that. Maybe some people do. Maybe some people write the report cards as a story for every kid. And I think I know a couple of people like that. And I say, good for you. If that works for you,
Mm-hmm.
then that works for you. Like, and I don't mean alternative reports. I mean the regular
Mm-hmm.
report card, all those boxes and all those check marks and all those areas where you put in the averages and stuff. Some people will do that totally custom, every single kid. Awesome. That doesn't work for me, and I don't have any interest in that. And what I've created and provided to principals has been approved. So I feel like I've checked off all my boxes, and those people can do that. I don't know how they do that. Maybe well, that's their program, right? Their program is to have no program. That's
Yeah.
their program. It's not mine. And really, the best part of report cards is when you actually speak to the parent about your
Yeah.
kids, right?
No,
Because
absolutely.
there's a lot of stuff written in report cards that's code. Like, even when I get my kids' report cards, I'll look at my wife and I'm like, uh-oh, it looks like he's being a bit of a difficult student when it comes to this, this, and this. And anybody else who read it would be like, it doesn't say that. I'm like, this is all code. I know how to decode it. I know, well, again, the conversation with the teacher is what really gives you and informs you about what's happening. But on paper, I'm like, well, my son's in the system. I'm part of the system. This other teacher's part of the system. We mostly all have a package we've created for how to write these things. This person's saying this in code, and I just wish that they would just come out and say it. But we're told we can't do that, so we don't. But then we get hit with it. Oh, teachers, you're lazy. You write report cards. It's lazy. They're all the same. Why are you yelling at me? I don't get to make decisions. That happens above me. Go yell at them. But we're the low-hanging fruit because we're the ones that are in front of everybody every day.
One of my favorite moments on my list of teacher favorite moments is during parent-teacher meetings. The parents sit down, they get settled, they get this expectant look on their face, and I say to them, "What would you like to talk about?" Good. Go. Oh, I see the transformation, because what they came in sometimes is not what we end up talking about. And I just love creating that little bit of that dissonance. So I love it. I love it.
I like that too. Do they come in thinking that you're going to talk about something in particular? Like, what
Well,
do you
every
think?
parent is trained to be a parent by the system. Every parent is tutored in what they can and can't ask for. Every parent was once a product of the system. And much like the whole timeline thing, I love being the person that helps them decode it and say, we don't have to do what you were just about to do. We don't have to. We can actually do this differently. Heck, parent teacher night, you want to talk with me next week? Let's talk next week too. So for right now, this moment, you got me 5 minutes. I book mine in 50-minute blocks because of the number of kids I have. When you think about driving home tonight and seeing your kid, walking back in the house and seeing your kid, sometimes they come with, what is it that you would like to know that you think only I could know because I spend the day with your kid? And they sort of look at me. I'm like, we can talk about marks, but I think you understand marks. We could talk about, a lot of the really technical stuff. But I often ask questions that put me right at your kitchen table. Are there any questions that you could ask that would put you right in the classroom? And let's do that. Let's do that for this 10 minutes. Let's have a real conversation where you feel you can go home and see something new or interesting or adjusted or grown about your child. And I challenged the parents. I said, marks don't typically do that. It's such a static assessment of development. And it's loaded up with way too much abstract information. 10 minutes. What do you want what is most important for you to know? If you want it to be the mark, here you go. I turn my computer around. There you go. We've got 9 minutes left. Anything else? And I've had people say, no, I'm good. I'm like, okay, nice to see you. Now, it doesn't happen as often in my portfolio now because with the community classrooms, you spend a lot of time getting to know the family. So it is different, right? It is different. But I have been in that position even when I've got 3 sections, each with 30 kids in it. Parents come in, I've been saying this for years. What is it that you would like to talk about? And I think it's just been one of those, it's on my list of favorite things because it disarms in a compassionate way. And it puts the actual parent back into the parent-teacher conversation. They don't easily access the template that they thought they had all the confidence in when they walked in that door. Sit down in a chair that maybe they even freaking went to the school. They're like, oh my God, this classroom, I was in this classroom. So I think to sort of recognize that we're not stuck in time, I like to ask that question.
I like that. I have to get going.
Yep.
But, you said some good things about. Oh, is that? It looks like. At first, it looked like a mask, but now it's looking like a cartoon character with big teeth, and something's wrong with the eyes, in my opinion.
You know what it was? I actually thought about my longboard and some
Oh,
of the drawings that are like on the Santa Cruz boards.
yes, it did have a flavor of that.
Yeah, a little inspired by, right? Like, so.
I want to say before we go,
Mm-hmm.
So in my job as re-engagement, I'm constantly in contact with parents. There's no marks exchanged, but it's wow,
There's no space. There's no space. You're there.
the anecdotal evidence and observations and conversations is just amazing. It's rich, right?
Mhm.
It's data in a different way. And then my high school son, I've gone to many interviews. So he's, knock on wood, he's done very well in high school. He's done very well in high school, and for the first 2.5 years of his schooling in high school, I went to meet all his teachers every year. And almost every time I walk in and they're like, hey, I'm like, hey, I'm so and so's dad. And they're like, they just look at me kind of strange, like, he's doing great. Like, so why are you here? I want to check in. The marks say one thing, but I want to know, like, how does he function in the room?
You want a conversation? I'd like.
Yeah, I want a conversation. How does he function in the room? How does he do with his
Mhm.
accommodations and all that other stuff? Like, yeah, the mark is great. I love the mark. The mark means, to me, it means he's understanding what you're teaching and he's demonstrating to you that he's at that level, which is great.
Mhm.
But does he have friends? Who does he sit with?
Yeah.
Does
Well
he
said.
piss
Well
you
said.
off? Does he
I
not? Does he need to
love
talk
that.
more? Like, what, tell me, what does my son do here every day? And it's nice to meet you. It's
Hmm.
because for a while I was working, for the first year of my job, I was in his school a lot,
Hmm.
working with re-engagement kids. And so they'd say, hey, I see you around. I'm like, yeah, I'm the re-engagement teacher. They're like, yeah, yeah, okay, okay. And I'm like, now we can wave at each other in the hall because you know who I am and I know who you
Hmm.
are. Anyway, so yeah, it's cool stuff. Um, I now appreciate in a different way. I will appreciate in a different way when I'm back in the classroom, no matter how no matter how it is judged how a student is doing. So they're doing really well, they're not doing really well. I would like to be more open in those conversations, but I would also like to continue the way that I've been communicating with parents now to flow into when I'm back in the classroom, to have a much more open dialogue back and forth as much as the parents can deal with and handle, so that when we get to parent teacher interviews, I hate surprises there. I hate when parents come in and be like, oh my god, what's happening in language arts? No, I do not like that. I do not like that, on their part and on my part. So
Hmm.
I want it to be much more organic than it's been in the past. Anyway,
That, that's. I think that's. That's awesome. I think that's exact. That's exactly where we got to
so
be.
sorry, go ahead.
No, that's it. Sorry, I was just taking a photo.
um, Gary and Rochelle were here. I'll just post quickly. So Gary said, have a great day. You too, Gary.
Thanks, Gary. Peace, man.
Welcome back. Gary was traveling. He's an international teacher. He was traveling for a little bit. I'm not going to say more than that, Gary. I'll leave it up to you to share with us at a later
Yeah.
day if you wish. But welcome back to Canada. And Rochelle says politely that this was an interesting discussion and wishes us a great weekend. And we wish you a great weekend as well.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
That was Decoded Season 7, Episode 26, number 291. We'll catch you later. Have a great weekend.
Peace, man.